Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I don't want to talk about a specific book that I read, but rather I want to do the usual wrap-up and TBR that comes at the end of each month. In terms of what I read in August, I think it was a pretty solid month. A few kind of boring books and short stories, but nothing overwhelming like in previous months. And I'm very excited to get to what I have planned for September. I'm also, what's interesting is when I went on my recent trips to San Francisco and Portland, I stumbled across some bookstores that I stopped at and picked up some books, and I've slowly been accumulating books that I haven't really gotten through, and so I'm hoping to finally get through that collection of books in the month of September. I do plan on going to plan on going to a wedding in Seattle in September. So hopefully I don't stumble across a library in my time. If I look it up, I'm definitely going to go to a bookstore or something like that. I'm definitely going to go to a bookstore, but hopefully I don't stumble across one because the last thing I need is more books. But yeah, without further ado, let's talk about what I read in August and what I plan to read in September. For my August wrap-up, I read and watched a number of things. In August, I watched The Naked City, which was part of the usual collaboration with Lucas from Strike the Sun MD. I thought it was a very interesting movie. It made a number of weird choices, but overall, I feel like it's a good experience having watched it because of its contribution to the film noir genre as a whole. So definitely recommend that. And in September, Lucas and I are going to watch Andrei Rublev. Or for September, we'll make a video about that, so be on the lookout for that. Never really seen Soviet Union or Russian films before. Seen Japanese and Hong Kong, maybe Australian, Western European, American, of course, Mexican cinema, but very little to do with Russian, so this will be a fun experience. In terms of books, I read a number of them, including Regifters, which I thought was okay. It was a graphic novel, not a lot to write home about. Daddy Was a Number Runner by Louise Merriweather, which I thought was just okay. It had an endorsement from James Baldwin, which I thought was going to make it much more significant, but it just ended up being, a pretty average story overall. And then Othello by William Shakespeare, which I thought was great. It's certainly not my favorite Shakespeare play, but it does have a lot of interesting things to say about jealousy and just revenge and all kinds of things like that. So it's always a usual recommendation to read a Shakespeare play. I also read Evicted by Matthew Desmond, which I thought was good. An interesting story about, poverty and homelessness and the housing crisis in America. A lot of very interesting things to say, too. Not just simply sitting on the sidelines and saying it's a problem, but acknowledging where it's a problem and potential remedies. So it was a Bevan recommended book, and so as per usual, it was good to some degree. I also read Berserk Volumes 4 and 5 by Kentaro Miura. Volume 4 was probably the best of the month. A very interesting story exploring the self-destructive behavior and past of Guts. Volume 5 was also good, but it didn't go into Guts' character as much, but still very much worth checking out. I also read All My Rage by Sept TBR, which I thought was mostly disappointing. I felt like there was a lot worth exploring in the story, talking about Pakistani immigration, or the death of a loved one, or possibly, people of color in the justice system. But Sept TBR didn't really care to explore any of those in detail. The story just kind of happens, and then the characters get in trouble, but Tahir gets them out of trouble fairly quickly. So not really much of a struggle in the story. So that was a Bevan book club read. So maybe one of the weaker book club reads, but something still, entertaining and worth reading a little bit. I also read Spy Family, Volume 2, which was good. Very interested in the series and exploring where it goes to, but I do hope that the next couple of volumes have more stakes or something to sort of ground the series, because it feels more exploratory and more humorous than its premise really has credit for, or something like that. So its premise is very interesting. Like, there's a lot of potential, but I don't feel like that potential has really been reached at its apex yet. So really hoping that they explore more there. And then The Sleeper Awakes by H.G. Wells, which I thought was okay. It really had a lot of potential going into it, but then you get to the end, and H.G. Wells is super racist about like black police officers and the threat of African intervention in Europe, and it's not good. It definitely does not stand the test of time, although his socialist messaging does. So it's kind of a weird story with like conflicting messages in the end. I also read a number of short stories for the month of August, including God's Gonna Trouble the Water, which I thought was forgettable. Just a boring story that had potential to talk about, this like disasters and Black Americans, or like Black culture in North Carolina. A lot of ideas worth exploring, and none of them really. Like, I don't think the author really had a goal in mind at the end of it. I also read Amusements by Sherman Alexie, which I thought was a lot of fun, pretty okay. I do want to explore more from Alexie to see what else he has to offer. And then Stone Hunger by N.K. Jemisin, which I thought was good, probably the best of the month for the short stories. A lot of interesting sort of science fiction and a little bit of fantasy as well, and a post-apocalypse sort of human civilization. I've heard other good things about Jemisin, so I'll definitely want to explore more of her work. And then I also read My Dear You by Rachel Kong. Very touching story about love in the afterlife. It's probably one of the better short stories that I've read, and again, I recommend it just like I recommended it in the video that I made for it. And I also read a number of poems for the month of August. Be sure to check those out in my Poetry Thursday sort of playlist, so you can find out more about interesting poems that you might not have heard before. But what do I have planned for the month of September? As I mentioned previously, I am watching Andrei Rublev, and I'll make a video on Lucas's and my own thoughts about the movie. He says it's revenge for RRR because that movie was super long, and this movie is also 3 hours long. So we'll see how that goes. I have a number of books planned for the month of September. Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. Never really read the book, but I have seen the movie. I know the book is different from the movie, and it's kind of controversial too. So let's see how that goes. And then also Mija by an author whose name I'm forgetting. I'll put it up there. It's the book club book for the month of September. So I'm looking forward to it because it's another graphic novel, and those have been pretty quality, especially for the book club where Bevan's been recommending them. I'm also in the process of reading No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy, which I think has been pretty good so far. I'm more than halfway through it. And I do love Cormac McCarthy's writing, even if it is kind of long-winded, and he uses a lot of run-on sentences at times. I don't think it's of the same quality as Blood Meridian, but it's still pretty good because it's Cormac McCarthy, so I'll have a video out for that pretty soon as well. I also checked out The Violent Bear It Away by Flannery O'Connor. I had said that I wanted to check out more of her work, so this is me doing that. And then the other books that I managed to pick out from my local library. Don't forget to patronize your local libraries. And then, of course, I want to read other graphic novels and the continuation of the Berserk series, most likely volumes 6, 7, 8, and the continuation from there. Really looking forward to seeing what happens to my hero Guts, my friend, my good old boy there. I have my doubts that things are going to end well for him, but we will pursue this, or we will finish out this series regardless. I also have a number of short stories planned, including from authors Judith Cover and Jack London. I'm actually surprised that I haven't read Jack London yet for this channel, because he's such a prominent and noteworthy author from the early 1900s. But I'm guessing that's probably because I've read some of his work already, and I didn't want to just duplicate that for the channel. But I have read like The Call of the Wild in the past, and it's really good. So if you haven't read that already, I recommend it here preliminarily, if that's even a word I can use. And then I also have a number of poems planned for the month of September. They might start like getting more of a spooky focus as we get closer to October, because that is the Spooktober or October, or just the scary month. So be on the lookout for those kinds of poems. Anyway, that was my wrap up and TBR for the month of August and September. If you have anything you want to say about the books I read or what I plan to read, or you just want to make some recommendations, I'm always willing to listen and hear your thoughts in the comments below. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this channel if they do not already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and fall-oriented travels. Farewell.